It's such an honor to be receiving the Kadar Award today. When I got the wonderful news, I have to say I was a little bit surprised because I belong to one of the smallest academic units at Tel Aviv University, the Department of Classics. What's classics, you may ask? Well, as classicists, we try to understand how people lived, what people thought in the ancient Greek and Roman worlds, the worlds that lie at the foundation of much of our own civilization. We learn their languages, ancient Greek and Latin. We read their literature, their poetry and history. We try to understand their philosophy. We look into their ways of making science and art. At the Tel Aviv University Department of Classics, we are passionate about the past. I have to say, I am very proud of my colleagues who are among the best in their fields worldwide. But here in Israel, we are a tiny community. I'd like to think that Naomi Kadar, the inspiration behind the awards we are receiving today, would have appreciated our work. A handful of scholars and students who believe that the values of the classical tradition are desperately needed today. Democracy, critical thought, and the attempt to look at the human condition beyond material profit. But I'm here today to tell you what I've been doing in the last years. Well, I wrote a book, Literary History in the Parian Marble. This is a book about a stone found in the island of Paros in the Aegean. Originally, this was a rather tall stone. It was over 2 meters high and written in Greek characters. It was set up in 264 BCE. And this is a chronicle, anonymous, unfortunately. The Parian Marble dates events that someone 2,300 years ago considered important, battles, conquests, and cultural events too. The Parian Marble maps out 1,000 years of Greek history in its Mediterranean and Aegean and Near Eastern context. The upper part of the inscription is nowadays lost. The middle part is in Oxford in the Ashmolean Museum, and the lower part is in Paros in the Archaeological Museum. Now, in retrospect, I think I've been avoiding this inscription for some time. The first time I visited Paros, I was 19 years old. I had no idea that I was going to fall in love with the ancient Greek and Roman cultures, so I didn't bother to go to the museum. I went to the beach instead. Years later, I went to Oxford. I spent quite a lot of time in Oxford, but I don't think I went to see the inscription more than once. By the time I went back to Paros, I was a relatively young PhD, but I was busy at an academic conference. But 3 years ago, I went back to Paros, this time just to study the inscription. This was a 25-year journey, the time it takes to transform a young student into a mature scholar. To be honest, I don't think I'm the only one having a complicated relationship with this inscription, which may explain why nobody wrote a book about it over a century. On the one hand, Parian Marble is pretty unique. It's our earliest and our longest ancient Greek chronicle, and we can actually see it, not touch. But on the other hand, this is a chronicle, not precisely something you'd like to read from beginning to end. The Parian Chronicle, the Parian Marble, simply dates events of the past. It says things like, from the time the poet Homer appeared, 643 years, when Diognetus was king of Athens, or from the time of Alexander's death and Ptolemy's dominion over Egypt, 60 years, when Hegesias was magistrate in Athens. There isn't much excitement here. You may ask, why then write a book about it? Well, I didn't really mean to write a book about it, but as many things in the humanities, you can't control ideas, and you can't provoke them either. But if we are given time, some peace and quiet, and a good library, ideas happen. So there I was, at the beginning of my sabbatical year, working at the National Library in Jerusalem. I was then looking into the ways the ancient Greeks themselves told the story of their own literature. And the Parian marble caught my attention because it mentions so many poets. Side by side with Cyrus and Alexander the Great, there were Homer and Sappho, Sophocles and Euripides. In fact, as many references have to do with culture as with military events. In ancient Greek chronicles, this is unprecedented. Imagine a book, a 200-page book on the history of the state of Israel from the beginning up to today, where 50 pages were devoted not to wars with our neighbors, not to the economy, not to the startup nation, but to Shai Agnon, Leah Goldberg, Yona Volach, Yehuda Amichai. But why? Why does our chronicle so forcefully embed literary history in general history? To answer this question, I had to learn a lot about how time was computed in antiquity. You see, the Greeks, the ancients in general, they had no year one to count years before and after. They located events in the past by reference to well-known milestones. Major wars were milestones. The Olympic Games were milestones. Kings, priests, magistrates were milestones. You could say Homer flourished when Diognetus ruled, just like Shakespeare flourished when Elizabeth I ruled. Where poets competing at religious festivals functioned as chronological milestones too. What makes our chronicle so unique is that only part of the cultural figures are used in that way, while many others, many names of poets are mentioned for their own sake. And to me, this is fascinating. 2,300 years ago, someone on a small Greek island decided to unfold 1,000 years of history, thinking that literature mattered in its own right. Now, the large piece of marble was expensive, and carving the text on it wasn't cheap either. Thanks to those efforts, those combined intellectual and material efforts, someone today can try to bridge the gap between their world and ours. If that someone is me, I couldn't feel more privileged. But I have to share with you some of my concerns. Will there be a new generation of classicists at Tel Aviv University to continue the dialogue, this dialogue, with ancient Greece and Rome? I am grateful that today, through the Kadar Award, the Naomi Foundation and Tel Aviv University are already strengthening our link with the classical tradition. And I am appealing to you to continue helping us to be the gatekeepers of the past. Thank you.